Greetings from Salt Lake City. This is Tara Shaw. This is a presentation for Comms 532, Media Technologies. I'm here to talk about digital audio, which is in Chapter 18 of the book. My first thing I want to talk about is how we got the audio industry, because it came from vinyls, 8-tracks, and all the way from using reels up to now using audio interfaces with computers. So the next thing is we need to talk about is that what areas is it used in. You can probably find out pretty much any field you want to think of, audio is used. I mean, not specifically digital, but you can always find some use of audio in any field. Like say like in a museum, an art museum, you see a picture from Van Gogh and all of a sudden you hear Mozart string quartets in the background, just to lighten the mood. Also, it's also used in TV, radio, film, music, and for our purposes, we're going to stick with that since this class is Media Technologies. And then we'll kind of go a little bit outside that, but not too much. So, and also in this presentation, I included some stuff that were not in the chapter, so hopefully that will be beneficial to you. First thing I want to talk about is analog versus digital, what the differences are, and so forth. Analog signal basically is an electronic copy of what you would naturally hear in nature, like a natural copy of it. Like, the best example, probably from everyday use, is like an AM frequency on a radio. If you ever get a chance, go in the middle of the night and just open up your AM frequency. I know you don't use it very much. FM is a lot more popular, but if you get a chance to do it, you'll hear frequencies from all over the country. Like here in Salt Lake City, if I decide to do it, I'm sure I can hear frequencies from Denver, Cheyenne, Boise, even Las Vegas. So they just travel a lot further at night. That's why a lot of radio stations have to tune down their signals, their antennas, so their signal is not broadcast so far. Also, digital signal is basically taking an analog signal and converting it using a digital converter into a digital signal feed. The most popular use of doing that usually is through an audio interface of some sort. For purposes of this class, usually a microphone preamp usually works pretty well. But also the other things you probably should know about in recording is also what audio codecs are. World popular ones are WMA for Windows Media. There's also MP3, which is pretty much the standard. It's kind of glossy and very loose, but the size amount works pretty well for the music industry and for audio and other applications. And also WAVE is very popular, also AAC, and if you're an Apple user, iTunes or whatever, AIFF, IFFF is also commonly used. Also, when you're recording, the standard usually used is 41 kilohertz, which is usually the standard for CDs and MP3s, which CDs are still sold, but somehow I don't know why they're still surviving, but MP3s are downloading and internet content are a lot more popular today than CDs are, but CDs are still used to transfer data in digital media. For broadcasting purposes like radio, TV, and film varies quite a bit, but for the most part it's 32 kilohertz. But with HD, like the camera I'm using for this presentation, it's commonly done in 192.4 kilohertz. Which makes a much nicer sound and picture, which since Blu-ray came out and which had its day fight with HD on which format's going to be surviving, thanks to this primarily Sony, 8 Blu-ray won out. So. And you'll see on the slide I have a picture of a audio interface and also a very old reel system back when you used to have to cut tape. Luckily we don't do that anymore. Luckily we have software now and many other devices that help speed up the process other than having to do all that. All right, before we get too much further, I want to talk about different kind of microphones that are commonly used in a recording studio or used in some format like that. There's dynamic, condenser, and ribbon. Okay, your basic microphone you see every single day, no matter where you go, is the dynamic. And thanks to Shure and their SM58, it's become really, really popular. I mean, you can ding that thing up, bang it, throw it around, and it will still record. You can still get sound out of it. You know, that's why reporters love it, especially field reporters. They go out in the middle of the field and say somehow their equipment gets hit with a truck or whatever. All of a sudden, you can still pick up the microphone and still make a broadcast. It's amazing. Ribbon microphones are a lot older. They came out before dynamic. If you ever looked at like a boxing match or like the movie What a Wonderful Life, if you notice that kind of blocked oval type microphone that's metal and looks very old fashioned, you know, the microphone that drops down in the middle of the ring, that's usually called a ribbon microphone. It's called that because there's a ribbon, usually a gold ribbon, inside the microphone that vibrates when sound is passed through it. And both dynamic and ribbon do not require phantom power, but condenser microphones do. That's the major difference. And in a lot of recording studios, especially radio and some TV and others, they prefer condenser because it's a nicer, cleaner sound. The only problem is it requires phantom. It's also great for musical applications. They're used very much like in an opera concert or orchestra concert. You'll see someone up front with two condenser microphones recording the concert, which makes a nice, clean recording. And a lot of times in recording studios, you'll see them as well, because you get right up to the mic and then you sing or speak or whatever, and it makes a nice, clean sound. A very good example of that is the AKG C451, and they're fairly inexpensive, and they roughly range around 70 to 150 depending on what brand you get. The next topic is digital audio mixers, and preamps. Digital audio mixers are really nice compared to analog mixers. The one behind me here is an analog. But audio mixers that have become digital have allowed a lot of mixing, a lot of recording, a lot of presets. Like with lighting boards, you can preset cues and stuff to where you don't have to reset it every time, like for a show, like theater, or like if you're about to do a TV broadcast, having a preset cues helps you speed up the process and make it a more efficient broadcast or play. So in effect, that what they really do is take analog, they both receive analog and digital feeds, so it doesn't matter which one. But in the case of analog though, it converts it to a digital feed, which is good because that means you can use it on your computer or whatever editing device that you have at the moment. Also, you can mix the sound using mic preamps as mentioned before. The nice thing about mic preamps is most mic preamps work well with software that you can, for audio editing software. And what nice thing is a lot of companies make very nice mic preamps that make it a lot more cost efficient than using a digital mixer. You know, digital mixers are very nice. Couple M-Audio, Digi Design, even Avid makes their own preamp. Yamaha makes theirs. Plenty of companies out there, Sony. Now we're going to talk about digital audio workstations. It used to be a digital audio workstation was a giant room, like a section of a room where you had a computer, you had the mixer, you had all your computer, you had a keyboard, your MIDI controller, everything else, but now, and you had physical mixers and EQs and synthesizers. But now it's all software based now. Now it's kind of a virtual way of doing things. Ever since the turn of the century, into the 2000s and 2010s now, software has become more of a standard for use in video and audio editing, in this case audio. And a lot of the industry standard still is Pro Tools, but currently in the last couple of years, FL Studio has become more popular than Pro Tools. And FL stands for Fruity Loops. I don't know why the name. I guess that was funny. I don't know. Also, other programs that are quite popular is Reason, Ableton's Live, Cubase, and one that's used commonly in TV and radio stations because of the cost difference is Adobe Audition, which used to be Cool Edit Pro back in the early 2000s and before that. But then it got changed to, then it got bought out by Adobe. And Adobe has done quite a bit of justice to Cool Edit program. Just a side note, USB turntables can record onto DAWs as well as other USB-enabled devices. And also MIDI. And people who usually use digital audio workstations are usually producers, production assistants, sound designers, and many others, audio engineers and such and so forth. On the next slide, we're going to talk about one thing you probably hadn't thought of that does affect the media industry is music notation software. Music notation software is quite popular, especially if your station, radio, TV, or even especially in film, has a music director, music supervisor, music editor. If you have a film or TV composer you got to work with, or for radio, composers still media composers still compose for music for radio as well. You know, most of it comes from artists and record companies. Anyways, one thing you may have to do is create like little gimmicks, little PSAs, whatever. You might have to make a little sound clip to go along with a commercial your radio station or TV station want to put just to promote the station or whatever. And it may become your responsibility to do that, so it's good to know how to create that music if you can't use copyrighted music. And for that purpose. And the two leading softwares right now is Finale and Sibelius. Finale is the industry standard, but Sibelius is right next to it. And for those who like Avid, Media Composer, Pro Tools, if you get Sibelius along with it, Avid usually gives a discount for all three, especially since we're all students. You can definitely get a decent discount for doing that. And a lot of times, especially if the stations, TV or radio, have less money than they wish they could have, a lot of times music creation for the station usually falls to the producer or production assistant. So it's usually a good idea to take a music theory class or two, and if you have a chance, take a music notation class so you can learn how to use either Finale or Sibelius or both. So, and one thing that helps with both DAW software and also music notation software are MIDI controllers. MIDI controllers come in different forms. Some can be electric guitars, basses, keyboards, drum sets, and sometimes it can be just a simple little controller. Like in orchestra, sometimes there's something called an Orc Extra. It's just a little controller, and it's kind of like having a really big mouse. You're pretty much controlling the musical and audio applications applied to the software. So like a lot of times, like especially if your general manager asks you to create a little musical piece for whatever, some commercial that your station wants to put on, but you really aren't that great at music notation for some reason. Well, you can pick, but you say you're really good at piano or guitar or whatever. Well, you can take your guitar, hook it up, play the lyric that you want to do, and it will just write it out for you, and also record the sound for you as well. So it's kind of a nice way to do it without having to do too much legwork, and again, it makes it more efficient. What is MIDI though? Musical Instrument Data Interface. Basically, it's a language of ones and zeros that connects musical devices to music software via computer through using a MIDI cable. And with newer technology, a lot of times you can use it with a USB cable as well. Now I'm going to talk about the digital audio technologies that help further the audio industry and the music industry itself. The first one is CDs. We could thank Philips for that. They came out with a CD in 1982, and every time you buy a CD, they get a portion of the royalties. Another one that's really big now, especially now, is digital media players. Downloaded content has become very popular and a very convenient way to get music, videos, pretty much anything you want, even books. The iPod, hands down, has pretty much led the way to what we have now, thanks to Apple. And then Zune followed shortly after. And then nowadays we have iPad, we have Android tablets, we have iPhones and Android phones. And one other thing is gaming consoles. There's a big world of people out there using PlayStations and Xboxes and even Nintendo. And a lot of them have internet capabilities. You can watch or listen to any music you pretty much want. You can buy it off of their networks, PlayStation Network or the Xbox Live, and also Nintendo Network. And a lot of people get a lot of media from gaming console networks. Also, another thing is file sharing, which has become quite a bit an issue lately in the last few years, especially with piracy. Companies like Napster, LimeWire, and especially in the last couple of years, torrent websites. Torrents have become really popular because they're really hard to trace. I mean, they're not too hard, but the problem is the FCC only allots anything that's above a 30-second bit. The thing with torrents is they take a bunch of 30-second bits and put them together from different sources and different feeds. So it's like a giant loophole in the piracy. So you're getting the media, but you're getting it from several different sources. So torrent websites can claim that they're doing it legally, even though you haven't actually paid for the intellectual property. And one last thing that has been popular the last about 10 years has been podcasting, especially with YouTube. YouTube has created a free network of pretty much putting any video you want online. Well, there's pretty much any video on YouTube you can find a subject on. Any subject you want, you can pretty much find it on YouTube. And also, many websites, especially school and company websites, have started using podcasting as well to promote their business or school or any other function. One other thing we kind of touched on was cell phones. Cell phones have created a big industry for the music. And a couple big names that help provide music services is AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, and especially Cricket with their music. But the two big names, despite brands and services, is iPhone versus Android. iPhone came first with Apple using AT&T service, and then it expanded to the other major companies. And then Android, well, they're a service by Google, and they really don't care what brand, because they have Samsung or LG or HTC. There's a lot of different brands that use Android applications as an operating server. Yeah. Anyways, naturally, since iPhone is Apple, they use iTunes for a lot of their things, for movies, videos, anything else. And then Google, well, they have their own called Play, which used to be the Google store, but that's a different issue. Anyways, they changed it to Play a couple years ago, and now they pretty much do the same thing. You know, you can get apps, you can get anything you pretty much want for free or for a very small fee. And then one thing that's also great with cell phones are subscription-based services where you can do either via cell phone or via online. Few companies that use these stand out are Rhapsody, Zune Music, Pandora, Grooveshark, and Spotify. Also, there are free playlists and webmaster services. One very popular is Last.fm. You can pretty much find any group and any song on there if you want to cloud technology. You can pretty much get whatever song or artist or whatever you want music-wise from there. Also, Slack or personal radio has become really popular. It's just an online radio station. You can listen to, again, whatever you want. So, but Pandora and Groove Sharp and Spotify pretty much lead the pack on that. So, and then, of course, we go into the cloud. Cloud technology has become really popular in the last few years. It's basically a giant internet storage space. It has some positives and cons. I mean, Google Play has used it to create a giant place for all its Google account holders via Google Music. And of course, Apple has put their foot in with iCloud via, of course, iTunes, since it's their product. Amazon has also gone into it via, they have their own Amazon Cloud Drive, and they have which uses a cloud player, coincidentally, to play the media, in this case audio and music. But one issue that's been plaguing the cloud technology is cyber locker services. The thing with that is it has created a way for piracy to be undetectable. Because on CyberLocker websites, you can't, there's no search bar for exactly, you just pull up whatever media you threw on there, and then, so it's harder for cybersecurity or cyber law enforcement to track down anyone trying to commit piracy. Also, so that kind of leads us into copyright law, which is kind of a giant thing. The first thing we're going to talk about is the Audio Home Recording Act of 1982. Basically, this is an act that pretty much protects you from making a copy of something you bought, like a movie, music, whatever, unless you do it for profit. As long as you don't do it for profit, you're fine, or for educational purposes or whatever. But it's when you make it for commercial use that most people tend to have an issue with that. And then they usually ask for a royalty fee, and then if they usually don't receive that royalty fee, or fees, could be more, then they usually call it piracy or theft. Everyone will look at it. And then the next one is the Digital Performance Right and Sound Recordings Act of 1995. Basically, what this one pretty much did was gave copyright owners the privilege or the right, however you want to look at that, to let other people use their content, which, you know, makes sense, you know. But usually when someone asks to use someone else's content, usually labeled intellectual property in legal standards, usually they want a fee of some sort, and usually several fees, depending on how much content and how much wants to be used and for what purpose. And usually, especially through sales, especially like movies and through TV shows and like the music industry itself, every time that you hear that music or hear that video being played, all of a sudden they want to see their music. They see their get paid for the intellectual property. And another one is no electronic theft law. Basically, that one is what I said earlier about taking intellectual property and trying to make a profit off of it. This is when cyber cops pretty much go after people who are trying to make a profit off of content they did not purchase, or having other people did. Or they may have purchased it, but then they're giving it to other people for no price at all, so the people who own that intellectual property are making what's due to them cost-wise and price-wise. And the last one we're talking about, which made kind of an impact on this world of copyright and forensic musicology, is the Digital Millennium Copyright Act of 1988. Basically, it went a step further and tried to protect the copyrights of intellectual property of music, audio, video. And basically, it also created DRM, which is Digital Rights Management Protection Software, that's usually put on a lot of downloadable media, like music, audio, video. That way it's harder to, download it for free. You have to pay for it. So, like through iTunes or Google Play or however you want to do that, or through Rhapsody or Grooveshark. But one big issue that came up, especially with torrents and file sharing, was the case of MGM Studios versus Grokster Limited. Basically, it was over Grokster sharing MGM media with other people without people paying for that content. They could just download it from Grokster for free. So there was a giant lawsuit in June of 27th of 2005, and the Supreme Court ruled that file sharing was illegal without in the purposes of downloading media content. Basically saying that you got to pay for that content if you want it. And next thing we're going to talk about is some issues that have come up in copyright. Like with CDs. Thing with CDs is they don't have a DRM on them, or digital rights management. So it's very easy to rip a CD onto a computer and just give the songs or playlists or whatever away for free and without being traced by cyber police. The U.S. Department of Justice and RIAA, or RIAA, have started cracking down based on the Digital Millennium Copyright Act on people who are not paying for media content like music and audio and video. And one thing they've done is if you have an internet service at home, which most of us should, a lot of your service providers like Charter, Comcast, used to be Questar, but now it's CenturyTel. AT&T, Verizon, pretty much Cox Cable, anyone who really provides internet service have decided to do what's called graduated response, which is kind of so slow, but basically they're trying to help stop piracy, online piracy, and they're working with cyber police to stop that from happening or try to at least slow it down. But in reality, it doesn't always, not always a perfect way to go. So it doesn't always work. So also another thing that's called Pirate Bay. Basically, they got in trouble for basically doing what Grokster did with file sharing, trying to help people get music and content for free without paying for it. And then one also that's kind of given an issue, especially with CyberLocker services, is Mega Upload. Mega Upload is, again, a CyberLocker service. Basically, it's hard to detect any media that's been uploaded or downloaded off of it because they don't create a search for it. It's just people allowing other people to access their content and download. So it's harder for cyber police to track what they do. The two big names in copyright enforcement are ASCAP and BMI. They copyright pretty much most of the music copyright industry. There are others out there that are more specific, but most usually come through those two. Also, one more thing is Grooveshark got in trouble a few years ago because they failed to get the licenses to run an online radio station. So it seems like in the last few years that the Department of Justice, RIA, FCC, all of them are really, really cracking down on piracy. So, because it has really cost the music industry a bunch of money. So my question for this class is, in the future, do you think the music industry will survive with piracy on the rise? And also, what new technologies are available and foreseeable in 10 years for music and audio production? Thank you for watching. Look forward to your replies, and I'll see you online. Thanks.